Ding kalaban ng COVID.
Ayokong makahawa.
At mahawa.
Pero kailangan ko na magtrabaho.
Kaya di ako magiging pabaya.
Di matigas ang aking ulo.
Iingatan ko ang aking sarili.
Para maingatan ang pamilya ko.
Ito ang ambag ko.
Ako,
Ikaw.
Lahat tayo.
Sama-sama nating
Mayaangat ang bayan.
Basta't sama-sama tayo.
Sa pag-ingat buhay.
Para sa ating hanap buhay.
Mas hugas iwas.
Narito po tayo ngayon sa Samal Island, Davao del Norte, kung saan mamaya ay magkakaroon po ng regular talk to the people ang ating presidente galing po sa Davao City. Bumisita po ang Pangulo sa Kuta General Bautista Headquarters sa Holosulu noong Biyernes, 22 ng Enero. Nais ng Pangulo ang complete decommissioning ng UAE helicopters ng Philippine Air Force matapos ang insidente sa Bukidnon kung saan bumagsak ang isang UH-1H helicopter. Nagpahayag ang Commander-in-Chief na gusto niyang bumili ng 6 hanggang 7 bagong helicopters para sa ating hukbong himpapawid. Kinilala rin ng ating mga sundalo at pinarangalan ang 23 sundalo ng Order Flapu-Lapu with the rank of Kamagi. Sinabi rin ng Pangulo na kasama sa unang libreng mababakunahan kontra coronavirus ang pamilya ng mga uniform personnel. Pumunta naman po tayo sa naging pagdinig ng Senado tungkol sa vaccination noong Biyernes. Itong ilan sa mahalagang mga puntong lumabas. Muling inulit po ni Secretary Galvez ang ating COVID-SAR na ang COVID-19 vaccines na bibilhin gagamitin ang pondo ng pamahalaan ay pipiliin ng Vaccine Expert Panel at ang bakuna na magagaling sa vaccine manufacturers na makukuha ng Emergency Use Authorization ang gagamitin para eligible recipients. Hindi normal ang panahon ngayon po, no? Lahat ng bakunang contra-virus ay minadali ma-develop. Gayunpaman, sabi ng mga eksperto, mas malaki ang benepisyong makukuha sa bakuna kesa sa abiriyang maitudulot nito. Dagdag pa ng National Task Force ng bakuna ay isa sa publiko matapos pirmahan ang supply agreements. Subject to supply, sabi ni Secretary Galvez na mababakunahan ang lahat ng health workers sa loob ng 1 buwan. At dahil karamihan ng third quarter at fourth quarter ngayong taon, inaasahan ang massive inoculation sa mga ganong panahon at inaasahan matatapos ang pagbabakuna sa first quarter ng 2022. Ayon din po sa ating vaccine SAR, kailangan magpasa ng indemnification law na magbibigay tulong sa mga nabakunahan kung sakaling magkaroon ng adverse effects pagkatapos mabakunahan. Ito po ay dahil meron lang po nga tayong emergency use authorization at wala pa pong general use authorization. Pumunta naman po tayo sa balitang IATF. Inaprubahan ng inyong IATF ang rekomendasyon na i-relax ang age-based restrictions sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng Modified General Community Quarantine simula 1 ng Pebrero 2021. Ayon sa IATF Resolution number 5, yung mga nasa below 10 years old at yung mga nasa over 65 years old ay mananatili pa rin sa kanilang mga bahay. Homeliners, kumbaga. Samantala, ang mga lokal na pamahalaan ay hinihiyakat na i-adapt ang parehas na relaxation of age-based restrictions sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng General Community Quarantine, gaya po ng Metro Manila at dito po sa Davao Region. Mamaya ay makakasama natin po si DTI Secretary Mon Lopez para ipaliwanag kung bakit ito ang naging desisyon ng IATF. Unanimous naman po ang naging desisyon ng IATF kung saan inaprubahan itong relaxation ng age limitations. Naratific and vaccination plan for COVID-19 na magsisilbing gabay sa mga vaccination implementers katulad ng LGUs. Ang kahilingan naman po ng Professional Regulation Commission na magsagawa ng licensure examinations para sa professionals na nakaschedule sa Enero hanggang Marso ang taong ito ay inaprubahan din ng inyong IATF. Samantala, inimendahan po ng IATF ang kanilang unang resolution, IATF Resolution number 22, tungkol sa lahat ng banyagang biyahero na kasama sa travel restrictions dahil sa bagong COVID-19 variants by specifying those exempted, tulang ng foreign nationals na mayroong valid visas, kasama ng mga personnel ng accredited international organizations at asawa at mga anak na menor de edad ng Filipino citizens na kasama nilang bumiyahe. Dapat kasama po yung Pilipino. At sa general rule, ito po malinaw, bawal pa rin ang lahat ng mga banyaga na manggagaling sa 35 bansang may travel restrictions hanggang katapusan po ng buwan. Sa mga dumating dahil sa medical at emergency cases, pati na medical escorts kung mayroon, ay sasailalim na ngayon sa applicable testing and quarantine protocols as described by the Department of Health. Alam niyo po, ang bagong protocols ay pagdating, PCR. Pag negative, quarantine. Sa pang-5 araw, PCR. Pag negatibo, i-endorso po sila sa kanilang mga LGU kung saan dapat sila ay mag-quarantine pa rin para makumpleto ang 14-day quarantine. Yan po ang sa mga darating na mga Pilipino sa mga lugar na merong new variant. Para sa mga detalye, mangyaring bisitahin ang website or Facebook ng Bureau of Immigration. Pagdating naman po sa testing at quarantine protocols para sa mga bansa kung saan mayroong travel restrictions dahil sa new COVID-19 variants, ang mga pasaherong ito ay itetest pagdating at i-quarantine hanggang makuha ang resulta ng subsequent test na i-administer sa ikalimang araw. Ngayon po, yung mga itetest sa airport, nakipag-ugnayan na po ang ating gobyerno na ang first test po pwedeng Philippine Red Cross, ang subsequent test yung PAL Testing Center po. Mandatory pa rin po ang 14-day quarantine ha. Kung dati absolute base facility, kapag negatibo sa pangalawang swab test, pwede ang lokal na pamalahan na destinasyon ng pasahero ang magmamonitor ng remainder ng 14-day quarantine. Mga LGUs, kinakailangan po natin ng tulong dahil kung hindi makukumpleto ang 14-day quarantine, baka kumalat po itong bagong COVID-19 variant. Makakasama po natin mamaya si DOH Undersecretary Vergere para bigyan detalye ang mga health protocols na ito. Kasama rin na amend po ang sections na may kinalaman sa hotels or accommodation establishments o the Omnibus Guidelines on the Implementation of Community Quarantine in the Philippines na minungkahi ng Department of Tourism. Naglabas ang DOH na isang kautusan, Administrative Order number 2021-0005. Ito ang National Strategic Policy Framework for COVID-19 Vaccine Deployment and Immunization. Ang nilalaman ng nasabing framework ay ang mga sumusunod. Una, ang planning coordination kung saan ang inyong IATF ang magiging National Coordinating Committee samantalang ang COVID-19 vaccine cluster na nasa ilalim ng NTF ang tatayong National Technical Working Group. Kasama sa gagawin ng COVID-19 vaccine cluster ang mga sumusunod: scientific evaluation and selection, diplomatic engagement and negotiation, procurement and finance, cold chain and logistics, immunization program, and demand generation and communications. Pangalawa, financing and funding mechanism kung saan ang budget at funding para sa COVID-19 vaccine ay may integrate sa national budgets ng implementing agencies kung kinakailangan. Ang ibang funding methods at mechanisms tulad ng multilateral development bank arrangements, local bank facilitated loans, and advanced market commitments ay dapat i-explore. Pangatlo, identification of eligible population kung saan babakunahan ang most at risk at most vulnerable na populasyon. Kabilig dito po ang mga sumusunod, ang mga frontline health workers, ang ating senior citizens, ang indigent population, ang uniformed personnel at ang kanilang kapamilya, persons with comorbidities, and vulnerable population group. Kasama po ako doon. Pang-apat, cold chain supply and healthcare waste management system kung saan kinukonsidera sa cold chain and logistics plan ang mga bakunang nangangailangan ng ultra cold storage temperature, -70. Dalawa lang naman po yung bakuna na kinakailangan ng ultra cold storage, ang Pfizer at ang Moderna. At pagtukoy sa practical interventions tulad ng pagkuha ng logistic service providers para ma-deploy ang UCC equipment at mapabilis ang facilitation ng vaccine transportation. Ito naman po yung mga task groups na napaloob sa administrative order, ang COVID-19 Vaccine Cluster, ang Task Force on Vaccine Evaluation and Selection, ang Task Group on Diplomatic Engagement and Negotiation, Task Force on COVID-19 Vaccination Procurement and Financing, at ang Task Group on Cold Chain and Logistics Management, Task Group on COVID-19 Immunization Program, Task Group on Demand Generation and Communications, National Immunization Technical Advisory Group, NITAG on COVID-19 vaccines, at National Adverse Effects Following Immunization Committee na pinangungunahan po ng ating suki, Dr. Lulu Bravo. Dito po nagtatapos ang ating presentasyon. Pero bago po tayo pumunta sa mga tanong ng Malacanang Press Corps, pakinggan po natin ang maikling mensahe galing po kay DTI Secretary Mon Lopez. Kasi po ang DTI at ang Economic Cluster ang nag-move para po maamendahan ang age restrictions, kung saan ngayon nga po ang 10 hanggang 65 years old ay po pwede nang lumabas. No? At kasama rin po natin si DOH Undersecretary Maria Rosero Vergera para naman po madinig talaga yung mga health protocols, yung bagong health protocols para sa mga Pilipino at mga dayuhan na galing dun sa mga bansang meron ng COVID-19 variant. So, Secretary Lopez, Sir, paki-detali po kung ano yung mga naging argumento ng economic cluster na pinamumunuan po ng DTI at saka ng NEDA na naging basihan para mapayagan na po ang mga 10 hanggang 65 years old na lumabas ng kanilang mga tahanan. Secretary Lopez, the floor is yours.
Yusek Rosette, sa inyo pong lahat, magandang tanghali po. Ito pong discussion sa IATF ay in-endorse po ang pagpapaluwag sa restriction, lalo na po pagdating sa edad. Ibaba ang age restriction from 15 years old to 10 years old, provided kasama ang magulang. Dahil lang una-una po, ang kailangan po talaga ay ma-revive yung recovery ng ating ekonomiya, may stimulate ang demand. Kung maalala po ninyo, last year, we started to reopen yung economy. Nagbukas po ang maraming sectors, pati yung operating capacity. Nadagdagan po, mga binuksan mula una, nag-umpisa tayo sa 30%, 50% operating capacity, hanggang sa pinayagan na karamihan ng sector from 50% up to 100% operating capacity. Makita natin sa mga tindahan, unti-unting mga nagbukasan. At subalit, nakikita natin na ang tao nakakalabas ay limitado dahil may restriction pa rin sa edad. Alam naman natin na anyone below 15 years old dati at saka above 60, una 60 years old, ay piniprevent pong makalabas except kung emergency at may mga importanteng gagawin or pipilin. Later on, naluwagan po ito to 15 years old up to 65 years old. So very limited pa rin and restricted a major part of the market. Kaya limited pa rin lumalabas at dahil dito, limited pa rin ang mga naging negosyo, ang mga bentahan. If you look at the numbers, gumanda naman po ng kaunti ang mga GDP numbers natin, ang mga unemployment, yung minus 16.5 naging minus 11.5 sa GDP. Ang unemployment lumala from 5% na magandang level natin before pandemic, lumala sa 17.7, bumaba na rin yan sa 10% at bumaba na sa 8.7, pero malayo pa rin doon sa 5%. No? So, ilang milyon pa rin ang di nakakabalik sa trabaho. Ang worry natin, pagka tuluyang mahina ang benta ng mga maraming tindahan, ang epekto rin po nito ay magsasara at nanganganib na naman yung displacement, mawalan trabaho ang ating mga workers, ang ating mga kababayan na baka ma-displace. Siyempre, magka-cut ng branches yan. Maraming nag-cut ng branches. Yung mga famous fast food, alam natin, nag-cut yan ng more than 100 branches. At marami pa nagsasara na branches sa mga tindahan. So, ang panganib po natin, kahit nagre-recover na yung ekonomiya sana, may signs of recovery, malayo pa rin tayo sa pre-COVID levels. And ito naman ang magandang balanse na nakita natin. When we were reopening the economy last year, especially from August to December, makita po natin na gumaganda na, nakakabalik yung benta. Ang numbers po ay coming from 20% nung height ng lockdown, 20% of pre-COVID levels, umaakyat unti-unti hanggang umabot na sila sa 70 to 80% of pre-COVID levels. So, gumaganda na up to November. And yet, ang ating pong COVID cases, kung alala ninyo, dati 4,000 a day, bumababa ho ito sa 2,000 a day. So, it just shows na mukhang natagpuan natin yung magandang mixture, magandang balance na as long as nag-reopen the economy at nagko-comply ang ating mga kababayan, whether sa trabaho or dun sa mga nasa labas po, nagko-comply sa minimum health protocol, ay talaga hong malaking tulong ho sa pagpababa ng COVID cases. So ito po isang magandang, I guess, formula and balancing the economy, yung livelihood, at yung protecting lives. So we believe po na as the numbers continue to improve, remember po na pinospone natin yung mga iba pang easing of restriction dahil nanganganib, sabi natin, worry tayo noong December, na baka lumala ang situation, magkaroon ng surge nung Christmas, nung New Year, sa dami ng reunions. Pero nung inobserbahan pa nitong January, may konting surge. Hindi naman po malaking pagsipa ng COVID cases. Kaya ho, it increases naman yung confidence natin na as long as, again, tuloy natin itong compliance to health restriction, I think the economy should be supported naman at unti-unti tayong mag-ease ng restriction. It's about time na after many months of lockdown, ay tayo naman po ay unti-unting magbubukas pa ng ibang sector ng economy. This time around, dito naman po sa demand side, which is yung mga pinapayagang lumabas. Ang prinsipyo po nito ay para ho, kasi ho, ang expenditure, lalo na ho sa mga commercial areas, pagka accounted po ang family expenditure, pagka pamilya po ang lumalabas, they account for about 30 to 50% of the sales ng mga, let's say, restaurants o yung mga ibang tindahan. They account for a big part nitong mga benta ho. Kaya ho, napaka-importante na as a family, ay mapayagan naman po sila lumabas. Isa rin pong dahilan yon na at least ma-free up din yung mga restrictions pagdating sa yung mga pamilya kasi minsan yung parents hindi na makalabas din, lalo na kung hindi nila maiwan yung mga bata sa bahay, gusto nilang maisama. So ito po yung isang malaking reason na kung bakit kailangan nung ituloy natin yung gradual and safe easing of restriction, pagpapaluwag po. Again, ang importante hindi ho lumuluwag yung compliance sa health protocol. Yan po ang susi na nakita natin para unti-unting mag-reopen tayo safely, gradually, na hindi lumalala yung COVID cases. So, subukan ho natin itong, at yung sa age naman po ang ating luluwagan. So, yun, Spokesary, ang major discussions po natin sa IATF.
Maraming salamat, Secretary Lopez, at ako po magpapatunay na inapprove naman po ang resolution na yan unanimously po ng IATF. Wala pong objections. Sir, may isang tanong lang po, no? Ito'y paulit-ulit nang naitanong sa akin. Kung pinapayagan na raw mag-mall ang mga kabataan, bakit hindi sila papayagang mag-face-to-face na eskwelahan?
Okay. Importante naman din yung sa eskwelahan. Pero hindi po ito, it's not about yung pagpili between sa pag-mall or pag-eskwelahan. Actually, yung pagpili nito is base ho talaga sa intensity ng interaction ng mga kabataan. Imagine po natin yung intensity ng interaction pag nasa eskwelahan yung bata, tabi-tabi, ang mga mag-aaral, ang mga estudyante, constant interaction, mas hindi ho natin mabantayan. At alam niyo po, they spend so many hours with that kind of environment. So mas mahirap po, mas hindi maprotektahan and yung compliance sa minimum health protocol baka mas manganib, mas delikado po. So imagine magkakasama sila for 7 hours more or less. So yun po yung danger po nung face-to-face. Pero dito naman sa kabila, yung kaya ho yung easing of age restriction, this is really more for family bonding. So hindi man sa eskwelahan, pero ito yung family bonding na magkakasama ho yung magulang at yung kabataan. Remember, ano po ito? Kasama ho sa pagluwag sa age restriction, require po natin na kasama yung magulang nila at sila lalabas na hindi masyadong intense ang activity. Either kakain lamang or mamimili ng kaunti, tapos uuwi na rin yan. Importante ho magkakasama yung buong pamilya. At nagpapalakas pa sila ng ekonomiya. Again, they account for 30 to 50% ng spending po, ng yung magpagbenta po ng mga pag nasa labas po. So, ang pamilya. So, yun po ang consideration. Isa pa pong consideration is dito po sa talaan ng mga economic, yung GDP growth at yung epekto po ng pandemic. In other words, marami ho naapektuhan, bumaba ang GDP, negative. Philippines po may pinakamababa na ang pinakamadiin na decline, pinakamalalim na decline sa ating GDP growth. Kaya ho nangangamba rin ng Pilipinas, imagine niyo po, tayo yung second fastest growing na economy bago mag-pandemic. Ngayon tayo yung pinaka nasa ilalim. So, kailangan ho talagang pag-isipan natin itong konting pagluwag, konti naman at dahan-dahan. Dahil po, eventually, pag nagtuloy-tuloy yung mahinang ekonomiya at yung poverty, kagutuman, nandyan na yung hunger, nandyan na rin yung poverty manatili sa atin at marami hindi magtrabaho. Nandyan na yung konektado na yan sa malnutrition. Pag malnourished ang bata, konektado na rin sa education, yung intelligence ng kabataan. At magbabackfire din po sa health situation po natin. May ibang health problem po tayo in the future. Kaya ho talagang napakaganda talagang, sana maibalik na rin ang economic recovery po natin. Thank you.
Well, Hari nawa, Secretary Lopez, itong pagpayag na lumabas sa mga 10 to 65 ay maging dahilan para hindi na tayo ang pinakamalaking bagsak na ekonomiya at di umano, pinakamabagal din na magre-recover. Ito po mga dahilan kung bakit nagkakaroon tayo ng tinatawag na family bubble sa mga malls. Puntahan man po natin si Yusek Vergere. Ma'am, kanina po dinitali ko yung mga health protocols ng DOH po at meron pa ba tayong maidadagdag dito sa mga DOH protocols para dun sa mga manggagaling ng mga lugar na merong new variants ng COVID-19. The floor is yours, Yusek Vergere.
Magandang hapon po, Secretary Harry Roque, and good afternoon to Secretary Mon Lopez. Ngayong araw po, bibigay po sana kami ng updates ng variants, but because of the time limitations yata, I will just explain the protocols that were issued in the latest IATF resolution. Yun pong IATF resolution, sinabi na po at napagkasunduan ng ating mga core principles ng IATF na ang bago nating protocol sa lahat po ng mga kababayan nating uuwi and those that are allowed, including na hindi naman Pilipino, yung kasama dun po sa resolution, ay kailangan pong mag-undergo ng test initially at the airport, and then they have to quarantine. Pagdalabas po nung test na ginawang yon, whatever the results would be, if they are positive, they are transferred to an isolation facility. If they are negative, they continue to do the quarantine, and on the 5th day of the quarantine period, they get to be tested again. Kapag sila po ay positibo, dun sa 5th day na yon, ita-transfer sa isolation facility. Kung sila naman po ay negatibo, i-hand over po sila sa local government nila to let them continue their quarantine period in their locality. So ang hiling lang nga po ng national government na there is strict compliance to the mandatory 14-day quarantine period, makumpleto po ng ating mga kababayan na papayagang makauwi dun sa kanilang specific localities.
Wala rin talaga. Ma'am, naputol po kayo? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, ma'am, I think we have time naman, no? Ano po yung bagong update ninyo tungkol din sa COVID-19 new variant?
Yes, sir. Gusto lang ho namin magpakita ng update do sa contact tracing na naisagawa na para dito sa variants. Can we have the slides, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you po, Secretary. Mabilis lang po. Next slide, please. So for the 1,154 samples sequenced from the latest runs sa Philippine Genome Center, yung last week po, we were able to identify, as you all know, 16 additional cases with the B.1.1.7 variant or the UK variant. This is aside from the case that we have from Dubai, bringing the total to 17. These 16 additional cases were 2 returning overseas Filipinos from Lebanon on the same flight, 13 from the Cordillera Administrative Region, and a case from Calamba City, Laguna. Next slide, please. First, our 2 returning overseas Filipinos are females aged 47 and 64. They arrived in Manila from Lebanon via PAL PR 8661 last December 29. They were tested and quarantined. When their results came back positive, they were placed in a facility for isolation. They have finished the mandated isolation and were discharged last January 9 and 13 respectively. 1 returning overseas Filipino went home to Leon, Iloilo. The other ROF went home to Binangonan, Rizal as indicated in her details, but we are still verifying this. Next slide, please. The other 14 cases were traced to 3 different municipalities. First are 12 cases from Bontoc Mountain Province. 7 were males. There were 3 aged less than 18 years old and 3 aged more than 60 years old. 11 came from just 1 barangay. The earliest date of illness among all of these cases was on December 31. 3 remain admitted while others have completed their isolation. We also have a 22-year-old male from La Trinidad, Benguet, who was tested last January 7. He is asymptomatic and remains to be isolated in a Benguet temporary treatment and monitoring facility. The last is a 23-year-old who was tested last December 10 and had already been discharged from isolation. He is from Region 4A and we are following up on his contact details and the other contacts that he had been with. So take note that based on the latest available data, our case from Calamba City is not linked to cases from La Trinidad or Bontoc. We are still verifying if there is a link between the La Trinidad case to the Bontoc cases. Next slide. So in this table, we would like to show the contact tracing done by the local government officials together with the DOH of the 12 cases of this UK variant. They identified 144 close contacts for these 12 cases. We can see in this table that our UK variant cases were linked to each other and their exposure occurred at their household, in workplaces, and in public places in the community. 8 of the UK variant cases were identified as close contacts of the 4 other UK variant cases. There were 34 other confirmed cases among the close contacts of these UK variant cases. We are now securing the samples of these 34 positive cases for sequencing at the UP Philippine Genome Center. Next slide, please. And our ongoing response activities, the lockdown in Bontoc was recommended that it be extended for another 2 weeks. There is further investigation of cases to see if there are linkages among these cases. But initially, we were already able to identify 3 clusters of infection involving all of these contacts who turned positive, and these 3 clusters had linkages with each other. So the contact tracing among all of these 16 new UK variant cases are ongoing, and we will be providing information in the coming days. That's all, Mr. Secretary. Thank you very much.
Oo. Ma'am, tanong lang po, no, dahil ako'y taga Baguio, no? Ito ba hong kaso ng Bontoc at La Trinidad nanggaling dun sa eroplano ng Emirates o ito po ay community acquired? Meron na ba ho tayong alam kung saan nanggaling?
Ito po ay bine-verify pa lang, Mr. Secretary, no? At atin pong alam na meron lang tayong umuwing kababayan noong December 13 at siya po ay nakabalik sa Bontoc Province on December 14. He had celebrations with his family and the other members of the community on December 25. And on the 26th, he attended a ritual for their religious beliefs with other members of the community as well. On December 29, he started feeling symptoms, and in the succeeding days, all the other members who are close contacts experienced symptoms also. So yun pa lang ang alam natin sa ngayon, atin pa hong bine-verify talaga ang original source of infection.
Maraming salamat, Yusek Vergere. Nananawagan po ako sa ating mga kapatid dyan sa Bontoc, no? Kung nakasama nyo po yung galing sa abroad na kababayan ninyo, na ngayon po ay kumpirmadong nagkasakit, sana po kayo ay maging homeliners, mag-isolate na po kayo, at kung meron po kayo nararamdaman na symptoms, ay agarang pumunta sa pinakamalapit na DOH para kayo po ay mag-test. Wag na po kayong makihalubilo sa iba, dahil alam nyo naman po, no, ang Bontoc dati, kakaunti lang ang kaso, at kaya pa rin po nating ma-isolate ito, no? Hindi naman ibig sabihin na dapat kumalat ito kung tayo po ay mag-isolate na ngayon. So, puntahan na po natin ngayon ang open forum natin with the members of the Malacanang Press Corps. Yusek Roque for our initial questions. And of course, si Secretary Lopez and Yusek Vergere are with us for the open forum. Yusek Roque, please.
Yes, thank you, Secretary Roque. Good afternoon, Secretary Lopez and Yusek Vergere. Question from Celerina Monte of Manila Shimbun. Ano po ang likelihood na i-extend uli ang travel restrictions sa mga bansa na may new COVID-19 variants?
I will
Well,
answer the question.
I think that is a decision to be made by the IATF as a whole, no? Pero ngayon po, meron na tayong bagong health protocols, no, na sinusunod, na yung first day PCR test at saka yung fifth day PCR, pero kinakailangan kumpletuhin pa rin ang 14-day. So, I would say that is a hopeful signal na baka naman po ay hindi na masyado pa tatagal itong travel ban sa 35 countries. But Yusek Vergere, perhaps you can add to what I said?
No more, sir. I was just going to say that pag-usapan po yan sa IATF.
Second question po ni Celerina Monte
next question,
ng Manila.
please.
Yes. Second question, clarification daw po on exemptions sa travel restrictions. Yun daw pong foreign spouse and or minor children, dapat bang kasama nila sa travel yung asawang Filipino o pwede namang hindi? Basta may valid visa sila. Halimbawa, nandito sa Pilipinas ang asawang Pilipino, nagkataong naabutan ng travel restriction ng foreigner na asawa while abroad, pwede ba sila makapasok ng Pilipinas?
Well, as worded po yung resolution, dapat kasama po yung asawang Pilipina. At hindi nga lang po dapat kasama pa yung asawang Pilipina para sa dayuhang esposo, kinakailangan meron pa pong valid entry visa.
Opo. Ang third question po niya, yung foreign businessmen, workers na may valid visa, can they enter in the Philippines?
Yes, Sec.
Lilinawin ko lang po, ang pwedeng pumasok ay yung mga may valid visas na mga dayuhan na hindi manggagaling sa 35 countries na merong new variant. So kung kayo po ay galing dun sa 35 countries na yan, hindi pa rin po kayo makakapasok maski pa meron na kayong visa. Ulitin ko lang po, ang mga pwedeng valid visas ay yung Section 13 ng CAC 13, 13A, B, C, D, E at G, yung RA 7919 visa, EO 324 visa, native born visa, yung temporary resident visa relative to Section 13 of CA 613, yung MCL 07021 permanent visa based on Section 13A of CA 613, EO 226 visa, special investors residence visa, 4782 visa, Section 9D of CA, at saka syempre mga visas issued ng mga economic zone, gaya po ng Aurora Pacific Economic Zone, Subic Bay Metropolitan Authority, Authority of Freeport Area of Bataan, AFAB, Cagayan Economic Zone, at Clark Development Corporation. No? Pero kinakailangan po hindi kayo manggagaling sa 35 countries na mayroong new variant at hindi pa rin po allowed ang mga dayuhang turista.
Opo. Secretary Lopez, yun daw pong foreign businessmen, workers na may valid visa, can they enter in the Philippines?
Secretary Lopez?
Secretary.
Although actually I answered that already, no? Go ahead, Secretary Lopez.
Oo, just in addition lang sa in-explain ni Secretary Harry, dito ho sa huling meeting din po ng IATF, sa pagkaalala ko ay makakapagbigay po ng exemption dun po sa talagang importante or kailangan sa business, hihingi lang po ng exemption dun sa mga relevant agency at mabibigyan din sila ng permission to enter.
Thank you, Secretary Lopez.
Thank you. Secretary Lopez, Pia Ranada, please.
Hello? Hi, Sec.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello? Yes, sir.
Go ahead, good morning.
You said earlier, sir, that the President promised yung families po ng soldiers na namatay dun sa plane crash a vaccine. Sir, we express condolences to these families, but is this tantamount with families skipping the line? And what happened to the government prioritization if the President were to continue doing this, no, giving vaccines to whoever he wants?
Well, I think hindi naman po nababago, no? Ang ini-expand lang niya ay kasama yung mga kapamilya ng mga kasundaluhan. And that's out of recognition on the part of the President na talagang importante po ang papel na ginagalawan o ginagampan ng ating mga men in uniform because theirs is the maintenance of peace and order in our society.
So, sir, just to clarify, he wasn't referring to just the families of the soldiers who died in the plane crash, but to all families of all soldiers in the Philippines.
I believe that is what the President said. No? As to how this will be implemented, it will still be up to the IATF.
Is there an idea of where in the prioritization sila? Kasi sir, di ba 5th yung uniformed personnel, so does that make them the 6th in line?
Hindi ko pa po sigurado, no? But as I said, I leave that to the IATF to operationalize. No? Pero wag naman po kayo mag-alala kasi sa ating initial list, 24 million ang ating babakunahan. No? If at all, siguro madadagdagan po ito ng mga 2 million if there are 3 members of family of the men in uniform. No? At sobra-sobra naman po yung inaasahan na nating dadating na bakuna by the 2nd or 3rd quarter of the year.
And sir, what does it say in the process of prioritization if the President can just say in a speech that, oh, I want to give these families a vaccine and yet wala namang meeting by the IATF? I mean, final na ba yun just because the President says so? Or does the IATF have to discuss it and then mapaprioritize?
The IATF, executive power is well defined under the Constitution, Pia. No? And of course, the IATF is advisory in nature. They recommend to the President, but the IATF's decisions are in fact implemented because of the President's actions and pronouncements.
So sir, does the IATF agree that families of soldiers who, many of them may not have comorbidities, many of them may not be elderly or even in poverty, do they deserve more prioritization, say, than people who have comorbidities or others?
I don't think I need to answer that kasi nasagot ko na po, no? It is IATF that will operationalize what the President said. So antayin po muna natin ang sasabihin ng IATF.
Lastly na lang, sir, for you, and then I hope I can ask si Secretary
Okay,
Mon.
thank you very much, Pia. You've already asked 5 questions, Pia. I'm so sorry, no? Siguro mamaya po, kung may panahon pa tayo for second round. But back to you, Secretary, please.
Yes, thank you, Secretary Roque. A question from Rose Novenario of Hataw. For Secretary Roque and Secretary Lopez, ano daw po ang mga hakbang na gagawin ng gobyerno upang maibsan ang kalbaryo ng publiko sa tataas na presyo ng mga bilihin? May napanagot na bang mga mapagsamantalang kapitalista?
Well, dalawa po yung sangay na ating gobyerno na nagpapatupad po ng mga hakbang na ginagawa ng gobyerno para mapababa ang mga presyo ng bilihin. Sa pagdating po sa pagkain, ang DA po, nung huling pag-briefing natin, napakahaba po ng mga gagawin nila. Kasama na po dyan yung pagmamonitor at pagpapa-implement ng suggested retail price, yung pag-aangkat ng mga lalong-lalo na ng baboy galing po sa Visayas at Mindanao, yung papalawig po nung tinatawag nating importations covered by MVP, yung mga kadiwa centers, yan po ilan sa mga hakbang na gagawin. But perhaps, Yusek Lopez, on the part of your department, ano po yung mga hakbang na gagawin nyo para mapababa ang presyo ng mga bilihin?
Tama, if I may add, Sec Harry, tama po yun. Ang importante ho kasi this is really a matter of supply and demand pagdating ho sa mga agricultural products covered by DA. So it's really important na talagang madagdagan yung supply na nasa market, nasa palengke po, no? Kaya ho ang DA as reported ay marami pong mga hakbangin para talagang madagdagan yung supply, lalo na itong produkto ng hogs or pork products na talagang nagkulang dahil nga po sa sakit ng ASF na last year pa at nung isang taon pa nagsimula na. At nabalitaan ninyo yung pag-increase ng importation plans nila para lang makadagdag sa supply locally. At ganoon din po yung mga tinamaan ng bagyo na apektuhan din yung supply. Maliban dyan, ang nagkasunduan po ang DA, DTI magtutulungan sa pag-monitor ng presyo at kasama rin po ang MMDA, lalo na dito po sa Metro Manila rin, ang mga Metro Manila mayors, na magtulungan pagdating ho sa monitor at pakikipag-usap doon sa supply chain nitong mga nasa palengke na produkto. In other words, kakausapin po diyan ay yung mga nasa market master, yung namamahala ng mga bawat palengke, yung mga biyahero na nagpapasok ng produkto, at yung mga nagsusupply naman mula sa farm gate. Pati kasama na yung traders in between. So, isa rin pong palalakasin yung Local Price Coordinating Council sa pamamagitan po nung itong mga DA-DTI at mga LGUs, kasama po ang DILG. Another move po is that we will in fact have a meeting later on yung Economic Intelligence Group din para ho makasama rin natin ng mga ibang sangay ng gobyerno that can really look beyond yung what we see in the market. In other words, intelligence work when it comes to the activities between the farm gate at saka yung sa palengke, yung mga traders in between, yung warehouse, yung mga nag-iimbak dyan, na mga nagpipigil ng supply para tumaas ang presyo, yan po ang susunod na pagtutuunan ng pansin.
Opo. Question from Evelyn
Salamat,
Quiroz.
Yusek. Salamat, Secretary Lopez. Next question, please.
From Secretary Roque, from Evelyn Quiroz of Filipino Mirror. For Secretary Roque, you were quoted to have said that if you could choose, you would get vaccinated with the vaccines developed by Chinese firms. Would you care to expound on your preference?
Personal decision lang po yan, no? Kasi nakausap na po natin si Dr. Lulu Bravo. Nakausap na natin si Dr. Solante. Ang sabi po nila, as far as the platform is concerned, yung inactivated daw po, yung patay na virus, ay ginagamit na for the past 260 years. No? So sa tingin ko po, I would feel comfortable na yung platform na ginagamit ng ibabakuna sa akin ay tried and tested for 260 years. Pero ulitin ko po, lahat ng bakuna na mabibigyan ng EUA, meron pong opinyon, hindi lang po isa, hindi lang dalawa, kundi tatlong mga grupo na ekspertong nagsasabi, ligtas yan at epektibo.
Question for Secretary Ramon Lopez from Evelyn Quiroz pa rin po. The Department of Trade and Industry said it would push for a shift to the more relaxed modified general community quarantine o MGCQ for Metro Manila by February if the trend in COVID-19 cases improves. Given the rising numbers of COVID cases, are you still recommending a shift from a GCQ to MGCQ?
Sinabi naman po natin na titingnan natin yung mga numero. Yan naman hong pag-change ng classification, nababase naman sa mga data na nire-review po ng IATF. At sinabi ko po na kung gaganda, patuloy na pagganda, kasi kung titingnan natin yung comparison, hindi lamang nung itong December, January, kung hindi compared to where we came from, no? Yung 4,000 a day, ngayon ay kung nagto-2,000 tayo or even below 2,000 a day, dapat i-consider natin yung unti-unting pagbubukas. Subalit kung akong tatanungin nyo rin, even at GCQ at tayo naman ay nagluluwag sa merkado, yung sinabi nating easing of age restriction, at yung mga sektor naman inaalaw natin mag-operate, I think ko po ay nakakatulong na rin po sa ekonomiya yon. Makakatulong din po yan sa pagbangon ng ating ekonomiya. Ang importante po talaga ngayon, risk management. Yung mag-aalaw tayo ng konting risk pero kalkulado. At kung based on trending naman na na-explain natin kanina, sa pag-reopen natin nung nakaraan na taon, ay bumababa yung COVID cases generally speaking from August to December. Ibig sabihin, we're doing the right thing. Nandyan po yung tamang formula natin na dahan-dahang pagbubukas para talagang unti-unting magbalik ang ating sigla ng ating ekonomiya na napakalakas po dati. So yun po yung, at saka tayo po sa IATF, ayaw naman nating magkaroon ng surge at unang-una rin po tayo, may mga systems alert tayo na pagka may surge ay talagang pwede naman nating baguhin yung restriction level. Kaya ayaw rin naman nating magkaroon ng surge na magkakaroon ng malawakang lockdown. I think yung granular lockdown na approach natin is really working for us at generally working on continuous easing of restriction.
Opo. Last question po ni Evelyn Quiroz para po kay Yusek Vergere. The Department of Health reported 1,900 949 new COVID-19 cases yesterday, bringing the total number of confirmed cases in the country to 513,619. Given the rising numbers of COVID cases, will the Department of Health now recommend a total lockdown?
Thank you, Yusek Roque. No? So katulad po
Yusek
ng
Vergere.
sinabi ni Secretary Mon Lopez, tayo po, yes? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, go ahead, ma'am.
Yusek Roque,
Go ahead,
can
please.
you hear
The
me?
floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Secretary. Katulad po ng sinabi ni Secretary Mon Lopez, tayo po ay may pinagbabasihan kung bakit at saka kailan nagdedesisyon ng ating IATF para tayo ay magkaroon ng lockdown. Ang lagi pong sinasabi ng mga eksperto and based on evidence, a specific area cannot remain to be in lockdown forever because there are a lot of repercussions. So tayo po binabase natin sa healthcare utilization rate at sa numero ng kaso. So sa ngayon po, pag tinignan natin, hindi pa naman nagkakaroon ng sinyales para magkaroon ng lockdown. Katulad po ng sinabi ni Secretary Mon, mukhang nagmo-work naman po sa atin yung granular lockdowns, no? Yung mga localized lockdowns na sinasagawa natin para naman po hindi masyadong magkaroon ng burden ng ating ekonomiya. So we will continue to implement this until that time when the parameters would tell us and dictate that we should have another form of strict restrictions.
Okay, thank you very much, Yusek Vergere and Yusek Roque. Puntahan na naman natin ngayon si Joseph Morong of GMA.
Hello, si Trish pa. Hello, sir.
Go ahead,
hello, sir.
Joseph.
Yeah, akala ko si Trish pa. Hi, sir. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Secretary Mon, tsaka Yusek Vergere. My first question would be for Secretary Mon. Hi, sir. Good afternoon.
Afternoon po.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Good.
Sir, yun pong, in the past, no, when you were discussing reopening the economy, you always said that yung center of activity, I think si Secretary Dominguez also mentioned, yung center of activity natin, economic activity would be NCR and Calabarzon. Yun po bang pag-relax ng age restrictions, mas makakatulong in reopening the economy sa NCR at saka sa Calabarzon? Meaning, kaya ba yan, sir, sa NCR and Calabarzon?
We'll have to talk to the LGUs. Magkakaroon din kami ng meeting to explain itong move na to. Dahil dito ho sa ginawang polisiya ng IATF is yung pagbaba ng age restriction to 10 years old is only for the MGCQ areas. Pero may statement po tayo doon na we allow the LGUs to determine yung age na kakayanin nilang ibaba, iluwagan, base sa COVID situation ng kanilang mga lugar. Subalit ang ating advice nga po is that unti-unting i-consider talaga itong pagre-relax dahil lalo na in the areas na under GCQ nga ang NCR at ibang probinsya sa Region 4A na they account for almost siguro 30 to 50% of the economy rin kahit konting lugar lang ito, no. Kaya ho napaka-importante rin na pati dito ay medyo luwagan ng konti. You know, sabi ko nga last year we were doing it right Parang yung unti-unting pagre-relax na as long as compliant ang taong bayan. Kahit anong age yan, kahit anong community classification to me. Ano po yan? Safe po, unti-unting lumalabas, safe po, basta ho mag-comply dyan. So at saka walang physical distancing. At in fact, pag nasa mga commercial centers, mas nababantayan pa sila kasi may mga health marshals ngayon dyan na nagpapaalala na may distancing dapat, magkakalayo, etc. So, kung titingnan natin, mas mamomonitor sila pag nasa ganyang lugar. No? So, kaya ho talagang dapat i-consider naman itong mga ganitong pagluluwag dahil kung gumaganda naman yung numero natin. So, yun naman ang sa atin dyan para talagang progressive din tayo at makabangon kaagad.
Sir, in other words, if it were up to the DTI, you'd want the Metro Manila mayors to also relax their age restrictions?
Ay, opo. Siyempre po. Of course, at saka yung mindset po na talagang, and talking to the mayor, sila rin po may mindset na sinasabi nila, gusto rin nilang makabangon ekonomiya dahil tumatama rin sa kanila to in terms of tax revenues ng mga businesses doon sa kanilang mga lugar. So ngayon, nararamdaman po nila na napakaliit ng revenues dahil nga po sa maraming nagsara at mga nag-lockdown. So hindi naman talaga uubra na hindi na tayo gagalaw dito. Kaya ho talagang unti-unti ho talagang pinag-aaralan naman yan. At nag-closely and jointly ho tayo dyan, working with the LGUs, lalo na po dito sa mga Metro Manila mayors na ka-meeting ho natin madalas.
Did I get you correctly? Gusto rin nila, sir. And then, nung pong nag-decide kayo ng Friday,
excuse me, I don't want to speak for them, Joseph. Okay. I'm not saying na gusto rin nila. Ang sinasabi ko, in mindset din po, ay gusto rin nilang magkaroon ng economic recovery. Pero syempre, on the other hand, binabalanse nila, worried din sila na ayaw nilang biglang ma-challenge yung systems, health system capacity or biglang dumami uli yung cases. Kaya ho talagang binabalanse ho nila yon. Yun naman ang sinasabi sa amin. Hindi naman po sila na against sa easing restriction per se, no? Mga gusto lang ho talaga nilang mag-ingat.
Sir, nung nag-decide kayo ng Friday, yung UK variant is already found in the Philippines. Hindi po ba tayo nag-worry about it?
Opo, again, with the compliance to the health protocol, yun ho ang belief natin na kung maingat po at saka if this is something that will promote family bonding, makalabas na yung mga and the social aspect, social development aspect ng mga kabataan, together with the parents, family bonding na rin, parang tingin natin may worth it subukan itong easing of restriction carefully as long, again, compliant. Kasi na-prove natin in the past that with reopening, hindi naman nag-surge. Yun ang inaano natin. Na with reopening, hindi po automatic nagse-search yung kaso. Again, basta ho compliant to the health protocol.
Alright. Sir, can I go to you, Sec. Vergere, please? Ma'am, pasensya na medyo compound question, no? Given the characteristics po of the UK variant, we have cases as far north as Bundok and then as far south as probably Calamba. Ang ibig po ba niyang sabihin ay kumakalat yung UK variant sa ating bansa at hindi ano pong magiging epekto niyan given the characteristics of the UK variant pag pinalabas po natin yung 10 to 15 na population? And if you can mention, Secretary Lopez, Sec. Vergere, ilan ba yung 10 to 15 na yan in terms of population number?
Well, at first, I'd like to say na wala tayong definite ngayon. Katulad ng sinasabi namin, pinag-aaralan natin maigi. Kung matatandaan po natin, ito pong huling batch ng samples natin, we're mostly coming from the Cordillera Administrative Region because initially we did convenience sampling. It was not really getting from all regions, but only those who were able to submit to us. And fortunately enough, the Cordillera Administrative Region through Baguio Medical Center, they have this biobanking. So their old specimens who were positive were also sent to us. That's why we were able to detect this positive individuals for the variant. So it doesn't really say na, we cannot say that it is already conclusive that the variants are here and existing just because we got one from the south and from the north. We still need further evidence, and that is what we are going to get because for this coming run, we were able to get samples across the region. So we will be able to determine if really based from how we have collected these specimens now, which is more rational and equally distributed, we will see if there are existing variants across the country. Now, how it's going to affect, actually, when we talk about the variants, wala po siyang pinipili na age. Wala rin pong nabago sa kanyang mode of transmission, although we know that the younger age group are part of the vulnerable group. And we also know that 3 of these 12 who were affected by the variant in Bontoc province were of the younger age group. And so yun lang po, kailangan lagi tayong may caution when we talk about children. So we are trying to encourage local governments and of course our public na kailangan talaga po yung compliance to minimum public health standards. And if this is just really for the MGCQ areas, but for the higher risk classification naman po, pag-uusapan pa ng local chief executives if appropriate sa kanilang area or not. Again, we go back to the authority of local governments to implement these kind of protocols.
But from a management perspective, ma'am, hindi ba tayo mahihirapan na i-control yung pandemic if we have more people outside, especially in GCQ areas?
Well, that is the case, no? Kasama yan sa mga factors na laging tinitignan. Pag-uusapan po yan sa IATF. But again, we say that IATF core principles would be deliberating on this based from the evidences at hand. So, antayin po natin ang pag-uusap ng IATF.
All right. Secretary Roque, can I go to you? Just one quick question.
Yes, please.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. Sir, I understand may speech si Presidente tonight, but we're also ending at least yung community quarantine classification next week. I mean, Sunday. So do we expect a Friday announcement from the President? And yun po bang yung age relaxation, sir, is that set in stone, or can the President, or will he revert to 15 years old?
Well, wala pa po tayong nalalaman tungkol dyan because we cannot, of course, second-guess the President. No? Pero para sa mga quarantine classification, ang alam ko po, hindi pa kami nagmi-meeting sa IATF tungkol dito, pero hindi naman po problema yan, no? Because we can always meet and we can always announce the recommendation with the permission of the President. No? Gaya nung nangyari po nung minsan na talagang subject to appeal pa, inanunsyo ng Presidente. So, hindi naman po problema yan. At we don't see any drastic change naman po in classification on a nationwide basis. Patuloy po yung ginagawa natin na if there will be changes in classification, it will be localized.
But will he revert to 15 years old, if ever?
I don't know po because I cannot second guess po kung anong sasabihin mamaya ng ating Presidente.
All right, sir. Thank you for your time. Secretary Mon, Secretary, thank you for your time po.
Thank you.
Just to add, Joseph, we have to recognize yung achievement ng ating taong bayan. Bagamat marami pa po tayong kaso, we have gone down from number 19 to 20 worldwide in terms of cases. We have remained for the past weeks to be number 32 worldwide. Sana po magpatuloy at sana po bumaba pa ang mga kaso ng sa susunod na mga darating na araw. Baka umabot pa tayo ng 50, no? Sana po. Okay, back to you, Sec. Roque.
Secretary Roque, salamat po. Question from Chris Jose ng Remate Online. Para po kay Spokes Roque and Secretary Lopez daw po, reaction po sa rekomendasyon ng Department of Agriculture kay Pangulong Duterte na magpatupad ng 270 pesos hanggang 300 na price free sa mga karne ng baboy sa merkado. Ito'y kasunod na rin po ng pagsirit ng presyo nito dahil sa African swine fever.
Well, sa akin po, that is a recommendation made by the President. And I trust the President will make the right decision. Secretary Lopez?
Yes, we leave it. Thank you, Sec. Harry. We leave it to the President. There's a recommendation made already by the Department of Agriculture.
Opo. Question from John Punsalan of ABS-CBN. China has authorized its Coast Guard to fire at foreign vessels and demolish the structures that other countries built in Beijing-claimed reefs. How will this impact our foreign policy? Secretary Roque. Secretary Roque?
Naghang yata, hindi gumagalaw.
Okay. Secretary Roque, can you hear me? Yan, Secretary Roque. Opo, nawala si Secretary Roque. Siguro, yan.
Questions muna natin siguro sa iba.
Oo nga, kaya lang, hindi ko alam kasi kung naka-live tayo. Anyway, Secretary, siguro kay Secmon, may tanong dito si Creseline of SMNI. Inirekomenda daw po ng Department of Agriculture kay Pangulong Duterte na magpatupad na nga ng price freeze sa karning baboy at manok. Pero kasunod ng pagtaas ng presyo nito. Ayan. I think nandiyan na po si Secretary Roque ba?
Okay. Okay. Thank you,
Opo,
Yusek Roque. As I
Opo,
said, no, habang
Opo,
meron
go ahead.
pong kamangyarihan ng bansa dahil siya ay soberenya na magpasa ng batas na iiral sa kanyang teritoryo, yung mga batas po yan ay kinakailangan sumunod pa rin sa mga obligasyon sang-ayon sa UN Convention on the Law of the Sea kung saan kasapi po ang China. At under international law po, no, general international law, yung paggamit po ng dahas ay generally prohibited except for two well-defined exceptions by way of self-defense at kinakailangan po merong sending of armed troops into the territory of China at kinakailangan ng paggamit po ng dahas ay necessary at proportional at when authorized by the UN Security Council. Sana po walang gagawin ng kahit anong bansa dito sa usaping West Philippine Sea na magpapalala pa po ng sitwasyon. At ang deklarasyon po ng ating Presidente, tapusin na po natin yung Code of Conduct at lahat po sana ng mga claimants sa West Philippine Sea ay sumunod doon sa Code of Conduct.
Opo. Ang second question po ni John Punsanla ng ABS-CBN, Lieutenant General Antonio Parlade recently said the New People's Army is recruiting members in 18 schools, including the Far Eastern University, De La Salle University, University of Santo Tomas, and the Ateneo de Manila University. Does Malacanang agree with this assessment? Why or why not? And how will we ensure that students in these red tag schools are not put in danger?
Jam, I suggest you ask General Parlade because siya nagdeklara dyan. We have no access to information to confirm or deny what he said. Better get the opinion of General Parlade.
Thank you, Secretary.
Okay, punta tayo kay Trisha. Trisha, please. Trish of CNN.
Hi, sir. Hi, sir. Good morning. Good afternoon na pala. Sir, dun lang po sa issue ng red tagging, no? On this post of the AFP saying some of the students who have became NPA died or captured. I'm asking this, sir, because we're wondering if there is some sort of a communication plan, an overall communication plan in the government about how the government should deal publicly naming red tag people. Does the palace or the government realize the danger it poses on the lives of innocent people? And for may way po ba, sir, that Malacanang can step in to fix this sort of communication problem? Because as I understand, Secretary Lorenzana apologized in behalf of the AFP. How can we avoid these circumstances, sir, na kumbaga the damage has been done? Possibly the lives of these people could be in danger now. Since they were named, how can Malacanang help prevent these kinds of situations?
Well, Trish, as I said, that's a statement of the AFP spokesperson. Obviously, I have no authority to speak for him. I only have authority to speak for the President. The Secretary Lorenzana has apologized for mistakes. Let's leave it at that. But there is no overall there's no overall communication plan on red tagging. We leave that to the defense establishment. Sila po yan.
But sir, is there some sort of a plan maybe to an advice or I don't know, maybe tell them something on how they can deal with these things para po maiwasan?
They're out of my jurisdiction. I can only speak for the President. No? So I can only suggest that they be more prudent para hindi na po napapa-apologize ang ating Secretary of National Defense.
Sir, dito lang po sa huling speech ni Pangulo, it's quite long, pero yung part na pabanggitin ko lang, sir, na-mention niya po kasi at saka kaming lahat, na karamihan ng mga kaklase ko sa kabatch ko, classmate ko, 4 ang patay kasi matanda na. Kaya rin ako takot, baka kasali na ako doon sa mag-expire sa aming class 72 sa College of Law na matay diretso. So yan, pasensya na kayo. I have to inject something. Just a clarification, sir. Did the President mean that he was already vaccinated or does he mean that kaya po niya gusto mapabakunahan yung mga sundalo or their families?
Sa common meaning po ng mga ginamit na salita ng Presidente, wala po siyang sinabing tapos na siya magpapakuna. Ang sinabi po niya, gusto niyang mabakunahan at ito po yung konteksto ng naunang sinabi ng Presidente, of course, sure, handa siyang mauna na mabakunahan. not only because he is president, but also because he forms part of the priority group of the elderly.
Thank you so much, Spokes. Spokes, just a few questions for Yusek Vergere and Secretary Lopez.
Go ahead, please.
To Yusek Vergere or to Secretary Lopez, since approved na po itong saliva test po natin, can this be, how will this be used po? Will this be used in conjunction with the PCR test, or can this be used, for example, sa workplaces, or for example, sa mga lilipad po sa mga airlines as an alternative already to the PCR test?
Secretary, if I may respond first. Yes,
Go please, Yusek Vergere.
Yes, thank you, Secretary Roque. Yun pong saliva as alternative specimen, ang tawag po dyan ay naaprubahan na po last week ng DOH, ang Philippine Red Cross. And we were able to give clearance so they can already use it. Ito po ay may kondisyon na sa Philippine Red Cross laboratories lang muna po natin ipapatupad. Aantayin pa ho natin yung RITM validation study results bago natin full implementation sa lahat ng laboratory sa bansa. Ito pong sa Philippine Red Cross, they will use it for their mga specimens na pumapasok sa kanila. Wala hong kailangan na criteria kung anong klaseng pasyente. As long as the patient can provide yung kanilang saliva as the specimen instead of the nasopharyngeal swab. Yun po ang gagamitin.
So, in what context lang po siya pwedeng gamitin as proof that you are COVID negative?
Wala.
I cannot hear na.
Yes, ma'am. It is going to be used as an alternative specimen. Ibig sabihin, hindi na po tayo gagawa ng swabs, nasopharyngeal swab. We will use the saliva as the specimen. So in any of the tests that will be done by PRC, they can already use this.
Ma'am, doon lang po sa quarantine, So, para lang po malinaw, kasi medyo narito po kami nung nakaraan. Ibig sabihin po, after ng 5th day, ito turn over po sila sa LGU. And pagdating po ba sa LGU, do they have to stay in another quarantine-based facility within the LGU, or can they continue their quarantine, 14-day quarantine at home?
Yes, ma'am. Kailangan po na ito po ay i-complete and there should be mandatory quarantine of 14 days. Kapag pinasa na ho natin sila sa local government units, kailangan po makompleto nila yung 14 days quarantine period sa isang facility. Ngayon, meron pong ibang mga kababayan natin that can comply with the conditions of having a home quarantine. Kaya po, sila po ay maaaring payagan naman kapag ganito compliant sila.
All right. That's it, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you, Spokes. Thank you, Secretary Lopez.
Thank you very much, Trish. Yusek Roque again, please.
Opo, Secretary, tanong ni Creseling Katarong ng SMNI. Yung una po niyang tanong, nasagot niyo na po yung tungkol sa price free sa karning baboy at manok. Second question niya, isumitin na raw po ni Defense Secretary Lorenzana kay Pangulong Duterte ang listahan ng mga pagpipilian bilang susunod na pinuno ng AFP. May napipisil na po ba ang Pangulo na ipapalit kay General Gilbert Gapay na nakatakdang magretiro sa Pebrero? Kailan kaya ito posibleng i-anunsyo?
Ina-anunsyo naman po yan ahead of the retirement, no? Pero kung meron po siya napipisil, hindi ko pa po alam at mamaya lang po kami makikita.
Opo. Question from Melo Acuña for Secretary Lopez. Yung first question po niya na sagot na about travel ban. Secretary Lopez, yung closure daw po ng hotels, car manufacturing plant, are these isolated cases?
Well, this is really a result of generally a weak economy, weak demand. Hindi natin masabi ring isolated, but obviously the cases of yung recent, yung sa Tanitan, really part of their global strategy ito. No? I mean, kasi yung Nissan na-report naman din sa mga international news na they're also suffering financially at may mga losses din sila worldwide. So they had to do yung mga rationalization ng kanilang operations as well as basically finding a more efficient operation, especially in the Southeast Asian region. Kaya kasama po ito sa kanilang global strategy of closing certain plants. In fact, since last year or 2 years ago, they started closing down even in US and the EU, yung mga planta po nila. So talagang they are basically continuing itong pag-rationalize ng kanilang operations. And in the Philippines, as you know, hindi naman ganun kalakihan ng kanilang market share. Nasa 1% lamang of the total car industry. And on that category of passenger cars, 4% ang market share. So talagang challenge po ang kanilang operation, and they decided na kung ganun kaliit lamang yung kanilang market ay ililipat na nila o isasara na nila yung kanilang assembly plant dito.
Opo. Question for Spokes Roque from Eileen Tabiping of Abante Tonight. May mag-asawang OFW galing sa UK na umuwi po sa bansa noong last week of December. Pag uwi sa Iloilo, sinasabing locally stranded sila at nagpositibo sa swab test. Ano po ang pananagutan nila sa paglilihim na galing sila sa UK kung saan mahigpit na binabantayan ang pagpasok ng UK variant sa bansa?
Well, dun po sa umiiral nating quarantine law, pwede po sila magkaroon ng pananagutan dahil sa concealment po ng isang health fact na dapat dinideklara.
Opo. Question from Laila Salaveria for Secretary Lopez. What could make the IATF rethink its decision to ease age restrictions in MGCQ areas?
Hindi ko mahirap sagutin yan kasi bakit i-rethink, kadi-decide lang namin, no? na after a long debate, a long consideration, and eventually nagkaroon naman ng consensus, and there is really, yung situation po kasi natin, really finding that balance. Nung una po, bago ang pandemya, talagang napakalakas po ng ating move kasi hindi natin masyado kilala ang virus. Kaya talagang risk avoidance tayo. We really had to do a lot of protection. Kaya naman po, thanks to that kind of approach, talagang yung pag-manage po ng COVID cases, talaga hong bumaba naman po. And yung compliance, talagang ni-require po natin, yung compliance to health protocol. But now that we are seeing naman improvement on the health side, we really have to balance it. Otherwise, the economic side will really suffer. Ayaw din man at sa pag-reopening, ayaw din naman natin lumala uli yung situation na mag-surge. Kaya nga po, dahan-dahan itong ginagawa. If you remember, last year nga po. No? Kaya, despite the reopening, we saw naman na bumababa yung COVID cases. Kaya I think nasa same approach pa rin po tayo when we consider this easing of age restriction. Again, even from our health authorities, sinasabi rin naman po nila, wala naman po talaga sa edad yan, basta compliant. We are protected. Kaya talagang nagkakaroon naman po tayo ng pagkakaintindihan dito. So, sa tingin po namin ay napakaingat na po nung ginawang ruling na yon at pinokus lamang sa modified DCQ. Again, to manage the transition. At sana po maintindihan po ng lahat dahil ang talagang tatama sa atin dito in the near future, pag hindi ho natin minove yan, hindi natin niluwagan yan, ay backfire po sa atin ito in terms of other health and diseases and malnutrition and kahirapan po ng ating mga kababayan.
Question from Aiko Miguel UNTV
Okay.
for Yusek Berhere po. Yusek Berhere, naisubmit mo ba ng Department of Health yung daw pong recommendation to delay the implementation of age restriction in MGCQ areas by February po? Ano pong latest about dito sa issue na ito?
Nakamute.
Secretary Berhere.
Sorry.
Yusek Berhere. Apo.
Katulad po ng pagkakasagot ko po kanina, pag-uusapan lahat po ito sa IATF kung meron man pong bagong pwedeng ihain para magkaroon ng diskusyon dito.
Opo. Question from Sam Medenilla for Secretary Roque. Secretary Roque, from Sam Medenilla, yung kung may plano daw po kaya si President Duterte to issue a new order to allow LGUs to tap their emergency fund for COVID-19 procurement.
Hindi na po kinakailangan mag-issue, no, dahil yung sa state of yung National Declaration of National Emergency, may ganyang kapangyarihan na po ang ating mga lokal na pamahalaan na gamitin yung kanilang calamity funds for COVID-related expenses.
Opo. For Secretary Lopez, na-complete na kaya ng DTI ang other concerned agencies ang guidelines for Stay Safe Seal? If yes, kailan po kaya ito i-implement at ano po ang mangyayari sa mga establishment na hindi magko-comply sa nasabing requirement?
Actually, medyo na-finalize na. No? We're now looking at the other aspects ng guidelines. So let's look at this, hopefully this week, meron na kaming mailabas dyan. And this is basically, parang self-certification muna, para ho talagang lahat ng magko-commit at magsa-certify na talagang they will comply with all this health protocol can really put in their, in front of their stores na safe ang kanilang lugar at they are really complying with the health protocols. But they will be subjected to audit, of course, at inspection. And easily yung kanila pong ilalagay na sticker, kasama po yan sa fina-finalize sa guidelines, easily naman po pwede nating patanggal pag hindi po nagko-comply.
Opo. For Yusek Berhere, makukonsider na po
okay,
kaya
Yusek Roque, it's 1:20, no? Way beyond our press briefing time. Marami pa bang tanong yan? Kasi kung marami, meron din naman tayong press briefing bukas.
Yes, Secretary, marami-rami pa pong tanong to. For, marami-rami po, pero babasahin ko lang po ng mabilis. For Yusek Berhere po, kung may kukonsider daw po kayang super spreaded event yung incident sa Bontoc?
Hindi pa po natin masasagot sa ngayon. No? Katulad ng sabi namin, kami po ay nagbe-verify pa at nag-further investigate. We will be informing the public soon.
Opo. Secretary Roque, tanong mula kay Rose Novenario, Palace reaction please on graphic posted on social media by the City of Batak Police Station that under the controversial Anti-Terrorism Act protesting, helping, relief drives that aren't state-sanctioned or even retweeting memes can be grounds to classify someone as a terrorist.
Ay, malinaw po ang batas tungkol dyan. No? Tingin ko kung yung mga gawain lang yan ay hindi po sapat, but we will refer that to the DILG and the PNP leadership.
Opo. Tanong po ni Ace Romero, for Secretary Roque, Philippine Pediatric Society and Pediatric Infectious Disease Society of the Philippines are against the relaxation daw po age-based restriction and reiterated that staying at home will protect the children from COVID-19 infection. Will the IATF rescind the order? Secretary Roque?
Habang nawala si Secretary Roque.
Secretary, opo. Yes, Secretary Lopez.
So naintindihan natin yung position naman ng grupo po ng mga health expert at kinonsider din po yan. But again, in the IATF, we consider also the threats to economy, threats to security na pwedeng maapektuhan din sa pagtuloy-tuloy na paghihirap ng ating bansa at maraming maghihirap, magugutom. So lahat po yan in the context of risk management. Kaya nga po inuulit natin na in this pandemic talagang lahat naman po kinoconsider, lahat ng aspeto. At we take note of that concern. But again, ang panlaban po natin sa threat na yan ay again yung paulit-ulit po nating sinasabi together with the DOH, sila Sec Duque, sila Yusek Rosette na yung talagang compliance sa health protocol. Nakita naman natin how effective this approach was when we were reopening, and we were, I would say, relatively successful because cases have gone down. Kaya po talagang maingat tayo. Lahat tayo ayaw natin magka-surge. Kaya ho talaga hong natin, ipoprotect din talaga natin yan. But to the extent na ma-manage po ito, and this is really risk management and not risk avoidance, para ho umandar po yung ibang sektor ng economy, talaga hong kailangan pong i-consider natin itong mga ganitong reopening moves. Alang-alang ho ito sa ating mamamayan. Again, opening to 10 years old doesn't mean lahat lalabas. Ang sinasabi lang po natin, at least may option. Ang mga parents, isama nila, family bonding, social development, psychosocial development ng mga kabataan. And this will be done safely. Again, compliance is the key.
Opo. Yusek Berhere, may tanong po si
Okay.
Neil Jerome.
Because of lack of time, Yusek, I'm sorry, no? Because of lack of time, siguro bukas na yung tanong na yan. Pero I have to end the press briefing now. It's 1:25. Maraming salamat sa ating mga kasama sa Malacanang Press Corps. Maraming salamat, Yusek Berhere. Maraming salamat, Yusek Roque. And maraming salamat, Secretary Lopez. No? Mga pahuling mga paalala lang po. Kailiyak ng taga-Bontok, no ada, kada kayo iti, himadwa ita ada COVID na, ma-quarantine kayo nga ada gus. Na agrikina kayo iti sintomas iti COVID, agpates kayo nga dagus iti DOH. In fact, yung mga miski walang sintomas po, kung kayo nagkaroon ng close contact doon sa kababayan natin bumalik sa abroad, ay po pwede rin po kayo magpates sa DOH. Gikan diri sa Davao Region, kini si Sec Harry Roque, nagsulti sa inyo na ana ang atuwang bakuna, mask, hugas, iwas. Pero bago po tayo magtapos at magpaalam, panurin po natin itong munting video nung pumunta ako nung Biyernes sa Bataraza, Palawan para sa tree planting campaign na ang layunan ay magtanim ng 5 milyon puno. Ito po ay kabahagi ng rehabilitation effort na ginawa ng Nickel Asia para siguraduhin yung mga lugar na namina na nila ay maibalik sa dati. Panuorin po natin ang video at magandang tanghali po sa inyong lahat.
Talagang sumasali kami to help our environment.
Masaya po kami na makapagbalik po sa ating nature.
Unang-una ako isang genuine plantito. So nagagalak ako, sana lahat ng Pilipino magtanim na rin ng puno.
Matinding kalaban ng COVID.
Ayokong makahawa.
At mahawa.
Pero kailangan ko na magtrabaho.
Kaya di ako magiging pabaya.
Di matigas ang aking ulo.
Iingatan ko ang aking sarili.
Para maingatan ang pamilya ko.
Ito ang ambag ko.
Ako.
Ikaw.
Lahat tayo.
Sama-sama nating
Mayaangat ang bayan.
Basta't sama-sama tayo.
Sa pag-ingat buhay.
Para sa ating hanap buhay.
Mask, hugas, iwas.